Hello everybody, this is the lecture on natural selection, and I wanted to spend some time thinking about natural selection because it is such an important part of biology and how we think about ecological processes. At the end of this lecture, what I'd really like you to do is be able to define natural selection without giving examples, because I find even biology majors, before they take a lot of my classes, are able to give me an example of natural selection, but not actually define what it is. So the first thing we can think about, we can start to define it by thinking about four different parts. That overproduction, variation in traits, only a subset of organisms survive, and then the population then changes. Okay, so let's go through all four of those parts. First out, for natural selection to happen, you need to have overproduction. Without an overproduction, you're not going to have competition. So what we generally see, whether we're talking about plants, fungus, animals, whatever, too many babies are produced that will survive, right? It's not like there's the system is out of whack or something. It's that to maximize individual success, what we oftentimes see is that most organisms will produce more babies than will be able to survive in the environment, and those babies then are slightly different, right? So, whether we're talking about these two deer here, maybe these two deer are of similar ages, and they obviously have a different antler size. Okay, peacocks will have different numbers of these little blue and green spots on their on their tails that will then determine whether they get mates or not. So what we see though is everybody is different. Every organism within the same species is different slightly. And that translates to different success, basically. Now, we could see this maybe in like size or speed, right? The fastest cheetah is going to be able to chase down more prey and get more prey. But what we see, though, is that because there's too many things out there, there's basically a shortage in some sort of limiting factor. So for like wood ducks, it's just the number of tree holes that they have. Old trees that have like holes in them, and that's where they normally would make their nests. So now we kind of help them along with duck boxes. But there might be a shortage of gazelles that this cheetah is chasing down and trying to eat. And then kind of across whatever organism we're thinking about, there has to be some limiting factor, okay? And so if this is an analogy here where the population size is determined by one limiting factor, and in this case it looks like it's potassium. So if we were to add potassium fertilizer to this ground or whatever, the length of this plank would go up, and then you could fill the barrel with more water, and then nitrogen would become the limiting factor. Now, when you think about limiting factors and then how good each individual is at using these factors, we using these resources, we get varied success. Okay, and we call that fitness. Now, that is not this type of fitness here, where these people are obviously physically fit, but what we're really talking about is this type of fitness, where how many genes are you passing on? How many babies are you contributing to the population? That's biological fitness. Now, fitness is tied to many things. We oftentimes think of it as, like I was saying, with speed, right? The faster the cheetah is, the more gazelles it's going to be able to eat. The stronger these elk are, the more mates they're going to be able to have, and the more babies that they will then produce. Maybe the bigger elk will have that. The taller giraffe will be able to get more leaves. But we oftentimes don't think of it could be efficient, right? Maybe there's some lazy cheetahs out there that are not super fast, but they're really efficient with their food, and they don't need to be chasing down these gazelles all the time. So they're more efficient, so they experience less like energetic demand and might then have more babies because of that. So fitness is tied to all sorts of different genes in lots of different organisms. Now, fitness can also change, right? Depending on the species. Give an example of, let's say, these two rats here. Okay, let's say on this beach there's a bunch of owls or hawks that live up in the trees, and these rats come out at night and eat all the trash that the beachgoers leave behind. So it's at night. Which rat do you think would do better in this black sand beach? Now, obviously, this one's going to be more camouflaged and probably wouldn't get eaten by the owls as much. So the trait for color, this one would probably have more babies that survive than this one. But on the other side of the island, you might have a white sand beach. So this individual might be more fit in this area. So what we see then is differential fitness sequentially changes the population. Okay? And this is that idea of survival of the fittest. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean like individual survival, but like survival of specific traits through time over many, many generations. So let's think of this little example here where we have crows eating beetles. Now the beetle has this is the same species of beetle, but they come in two color morphs. So green and this orange color. The crows might, though, that are predating on these beetles, like green beetles. So they're going to eat more green beetles. What that means then is fewer green beetles are going to have babies, or fewer of those green beetles are going to survive in a percentage wise, and pretty soon what we see is the population is made out of more orange individuals. And what you might get to is essentially a time where green beetles have completely been taken out of the population and only these orange beetles are left. So to recap, you need to have, for natural selection to occur, and how it occurs, is that you need too many babies. All those babies are different. They compete, and some win, some lose, and that the making differential fitness, and then that differential fitness eventually changes the population over time. All right, that's all for this lecture. See you later.